Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Jordan, Executive Director of the Business Civic Leadership Center, and with me today is Stephen Rochlin, Director for North America for Accountability. Good afternoon, Stephen. How are you doing?
How you doing, Steve?
Good, good, good. What I'm hoping that you could share with us today are a couple of thoughts about the state of practice in the accountability and governance arenas. Accountability is one of the leading, if not the leading, consulting firm on accountability issues around the world. And I know that a lot of companies, particularly folks that haven't been in this space for a while, are kind of puzzled about codes of conduct and standards and what matters and what doesn't matter. So, to kick us off here, what is a code of conduct and why does it matter?
Why does it matter indeed? So we've got different kinds of code of conduct. We've got inside and outside. Now if we're looking at outside, there's a mix of voluntary codes and standards, and there are thousands of these things. And the question is, do they matter, and if so, how? We'll get to that in a minute. But what do you see? Where are your members going with code of conducts and standards?
Well, a lot of companies are telling us that they get a little bit of code whiplash. They say, you know, for example, folks who are in the supply chain business say that some codes of conduct want the light to be down lower, closer to the workers. Other people say that they want the light away because it's a safety hazard. So some of the factories have started putting the lights actually on a rope pulley so that they could bring them down when the inspectors were there who were concerned about the illumination conditions, and they could pull them back up for the folks who are concerned about the safety conditions. And they're saying this just isn't sustainable. This isn't a way to really do things. So that's why people are sitting there saying, which ones matter?
Yeah, that's a classic example.
Yeah.
And so one of the interesting trends right now is that we've got leaders in industry who are starting to say, look, we have to put some rationality on this. So what we're going to do is we're going to start benchmarking what we think are the best standards and best codes out there. And we're going to start saying what we think is reasonable to adopt. Now, what's reasonable to adopt? You know, there's certain ones that have been through the test of fire, things like the Forest Stewardship Council, things like Social Accountability 8000. These are standards that have been built with business. And
Okay,
that
wait a
helps.
minute. What is the test of fire?
So the test of fire is actually get around the negotiating table and hash things out, beat each other up. And so the most credible, the most legitimate standards that we see out there are the ones who've been through these massive multi-stakeholder type negotiations. And they've been out there for a while, and companies are very much involved with them. And so you can actually look, there's an organization called ICO which creates a code of good practice, which actually determines which one is credible and which one isn't. I think this helps. And then, I don't know what you see, but there's a potential for these actually to help with responsible supply chain management.
Well, one of the questions that always comes up, and I know it frustrates some folks in this field, is do these codes of conduct increase your liability or reduce your liability?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. Next question.
Thanks, Steve.
Yes. I mean, what have we seen? Have we seen a lot of litigation around code adoption? Actually, no, we haven't. So people were expecting this new form of litigation, make more money for trial lawyers. Haven't seen it. We've seen the reverse, actually. It helps certainly with an informal court of public opinion, and it actually helps when you go into litigation to demonstrate that you actually take this seriously. So I think it's been the opposite. I think the real question is, does it help with productivity, does it help with quality in the management of the supply chain and in your production activities?
Does it?
Well, we're starting to find some really interesting information. So the German Development Agency, which is now named GIZ,
As opposed to GTZ.
or GTZ, if we're here in the States.
Okay.
It has done some research recently and found out that actually there's, in some instances, 20% productivity gains for suppliers and factories that adopt just these types of codes and standards. Now the sample size is still small, but it starts to give some indicative evidence that, yeah, it can help productivity.
But it sounds to me, if I were really getting into the idea of looking at a corporate code of conduct, that I'd want to kind of game it out before actually signing on to one or another based on my internal company dynamics. Now, Steve, what exactly is the role of accountability in all of this? What do you guys do?
Well, I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah, it was only a setup.
That's right. That's right. So accountability, I think, is a unique organization because we bring a few things to the table. We have our own standards operation. We have research, and then we have services. So we combine all of those in. And we're actually a global nonprofit. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, look, companies are facing enormous challenges related to sustainable development. How are they going to affect their governance overall? They're set up to still govern for the Industrial Revolution. They're trying to figure out how to deal with the information revolution. Well, we think there's a sustainability revolution going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so what kind of governance and accountability changes are you going to need?
So how do people engage with you guys? Do they sign on to a code of conduct with you all, or do you go in and consult with them, or how's it work?
Well, we work in a variety of ways. We have a standard called AA1000 that deals with reporting assurance, non-financial reporting assurance. And we're the steward of that standard, but we don't have companies sign on to it ourselves. Others do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then on research, we're working very actively right now on a number of projects to sort of help advance the field, to sort of figure out new applied solutions to the challenges that we're facing in governance and accountability.
Like what? Give me like the top 2 things that you're researching right now.
Well, in 2 weeks, we're going to be launching a grand strategy, actually, for the Code of Conduct and Standards movement.
Oh, so this wasn't a coincidence.
Can you imagine? And so we're really going to be looking at how the movement moves to scale right now. I think it's proved that it's beyond sort of an avant-garde type of movement, and actually it's legit. It can be helpful. The question is now, how do we move it so that the standards become more of a part of market share?
And what's the second top thing that's on your mind?
The second thing is that we're looking at how we redefine competitiveness and how we look at responsible competitiveness. So we think that competitiveness in the future is going to be about how companies reduce their environmental footprint, how they embrace good social practices like these codes talk about, and how they come up with social innovation. And that will define competitiveness in the future.
Well, obviously, we've just skimmed the surface. If folks want to know more, how can they find out more information about you guys?
Well, visit our website at accountability.org.
That's simple.
That's simple.
Well, Stephen, thank you very much.
Thank you.